You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Jeff Garvin.
And I'm Dan Zarzana.
Let the journey begin. Welcome to another episode of The Hero's Journey, where we analyze your favorite books and films using Joseph Campbell's monomyth.
Jeff,
and
really the 90s again?
That's what the listeners want, Dan.
Listeners, really the 90s again?
It really was the best decade, Dan.
In the last year alone, 2/3 of our episodes have looked at the 90s.
Wow.
Of all of our episodes, 18 have covered movies made in the 90s, plus 3 from 1989, right on the cusp.
Okay, two things. One, I've not known you ever to care anything at all about astrology, so cusps mean nothing to you. And two, Major League just won the April poll, so that'll be 4 films from 1989. You got to embrace it, Dan. I don't see why you're so riled up about it.
There are so many good movies out there from other decades. What about Fight Club, The Matrix, American Beauty, Magnolia, freaking Galaxy Quest?
Every single one of those movies you just mentioned was released in 1999.
What? The Fifth Element. Good Will Hunting. You love Good Will Hunting.
I do, but again, 1997.
A Few Good Men.
92.
Damn it!
Dan, I think you need to realize something. You are the one stuck in the 90s. The 90s were in you all along.
Jurassic Park. Crap, that was 93. Darkman 3, Die Darkman Die with Jeff Fahey.
Okay?
Yeah.
Just like we talked about.
I got it. All right. Sync in 3 and 2 and...
Directed by Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure Helmer, Stephen Herrick, Mr. Holland's Opus was a holiday season film hitting theaters on December 29, 1995.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Dan?
The film was a box office success for Hollywood Pictures, grossing $106 million globally against a $23 million budget.
The eponymous Mr. Holland is played by Richard Dreyfuss, who received an Academy Award nomination for his performance. The film also stars Glenn Headley, Jay Thomas, William H. Macy, and Olympia Dukakis.
I would like to dedicate this episode to your wife, Ami, who is herself a music teacher and the inspiration for the theme of this episode. Okay, let's get started. Have a box of tissues at the ready. Clear your spit valve. That's gross. And remember that when a flat precedes a note, it indicates the note is to be played a half step lower. This is the hero's journey of Mr. Holland's Opus. Act 1 of the hero's journey begins with the world of common day. This is where we see our main character in their status quo normal life. It is the probably late summer of 1964. Glenn Holland, played by Richard Dreyfuss, is a composer, but he and his photographer wife, Iris, played by Glenn Headley, are barely making ends meet. Glenn does not want to be a studio musician in Los Angeles, as he says a little bit later in the film. Mm-hmm. So being a music teacher at the local high school, which we learn later is somewhere in Portland, Oregon. So being a music teacher for 4 years, according to the budget Iris has devised, is his only option for income to keep them afloat until whatever other life plans they have get going.
As I was doing my, third draft of the analysis of this film, I started to get really edgy because my analysis here defies the screenplay structure runtime paradigm that I'm always using to prop up my point of view. So I really had to go, all right, well, here I go. Dan's going to nail me to the wall again.
What?
Yeah.
Why do I have that reputation with you?
I don't know. I'm terrified of life and criticism. I just want to be right.
Oh, got it. Okay.
You described all the details of the ordinary world very well. And like you said, some of those things are revealed in later scenes because this movie covers 30 years and it's 2.5 hours long. And so the filmmakers had to really get you into it fast because
Right.
there's so much to cover.
I had no idea that this was a life story type of movie.
Yeah,
I thought this was going to be the story of his first year teaching the school orchestra.
Mighty Ducks with music.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did you know that Stephen Herc directed the Mighty Ducks?
Oh yeah.
I thought that was just an accidental reference that you just made.
He's like the master of the montage. Mm-hmm. so
this movie has like 3 of them.
More than that. The Ordinary World, to me, is covered really in one sequence. We see Glenn playing piano in his apartment, surrounded by manuscript pages, music manuscript pages, and we hear an imaginary orchestra, and then he stands up and he starts conducting. And in that one sequence, you get that's his passion. That's what he's all about.
Yeah, it's well done. It's a good introduction.
And I also just wanted to say, like, names are really important to me as a writer. And Glen Holland is such a great name because a glen is a valley, and the name Holland actually means ridge or ridgeland. And so this is a man who has very lows and very highs.
Dude.
And his wife is named Iris, which is a flower of hope and trust and faithfulness. And it's also the part of the camera that controls how much light gets in. I see that the special world for Mr. Holland is really teaching music, becoming a successful music teacher. Mm-hmm. And so the filmmakers cut right to the chase. I think the call, whatever the call actually was that was, hey, you got this job, happens off screen. But the on-screen representation to me is when his wife wakes him up on his first day as a teacher with a camera flash in the face at 6:45. Thanks, Iris. I didn't read anywhere that the iris flower is a rude awakening. Yeah, to me, that's his call to adventure is wake up, sunshine. It's time for your first day as a teacher at Kennedy High School.
The next segment is refusal of the call. Confronted with the fear of the unknown, the call to adventure is refused either directly by the hero or by external forces. Now, Glenn dreams of being a successful composer. He doesn't want to be, as we said earlier, a studio musician playing somebody else's music. He doesn't want to be even a teacher. As he tells the principal when he's trying to find his way through the halls of the school.
No, like most people, I only got my teaching certificate so I'd have something to fall back on, and now I have.
Now, this is offensive language to Mrs. Jacobs, who takes teaching the youth of America very seriously.
Yes.
There's a couple of other little moments, in some way, I think they're partial mentorship, but some ways they are also a refusal of the call. Later during lunch, we meet Coach Meister, the football coach, played by Jay Thomas. And Glenn tells Coach Meister that he plans to compose in his free time. Mm-hmm. And the coach laughs. And he's like, I can't remember when I last had time that was free.
Yeah, he laughs out loud. Like, oh boy.
And I thought that was refusal from outside forces. It's not Coach Meister doing anything to Glenn to keep him from having free time to compose his music. He's just warning Glenn that you don't have free time anymore. That's why I see it's also mentorship, but refusal. Mm-hmm. Do you have any refusals to add?
I do. Like you, I actually considered both of those mentor moments, but I'll expand. So the first refusal, he doesn't want to get up. He's like you said, he doesn't want to get up. This is a stupid idea. It's 7:30 in the morning. The first moment of refusal from without is he gets out of his car, and there's Vice Principal Walters, played brilliantly by William H. Macy, making his second appearance again. Like Dreyfus, right? Second appearance on the podcast.
Yeah.
William H. Macy. He's like the Kevin Bacon of the 90s. He's in so much.
Kevin Bacon was also the Kevin Bacon of the 90s.
Walters disapproves of his car, and you just immediately, right off the bat,
he's so
what a
judgmental.
Jerk. And
right
so
away.
right away, we realize that Holland's going to have some problems here. It's not a welcoming world he's entering.
And of course, William H. Macy's got a buzz cut.
Yep, it is. To him, it's still 1958, and he is clinging desperately to that. Did you read Ralph Nader's book?
He's probably a veteran of World War II.
Yeah, maybe.
And he still lives his life in a very military style.
God, now who's judgmental? Jeez.
I'm just extrapolating based on the clues about the character that were provided on screen.
I think you nailed it.
Tell me I'm judging. You don't know me. You don't know my address.
I literally know your address by heart. I had two other refusal from without moments. In his first music appreciation class, he approaches it as like this very Professor Umbridge, open your books to page 1. This is the who can tell me the definition of music? I mean, it's the worst. And the students,
it's a very Bueller moment.
Yes,
It's like anyone.
The students are like, nope, not weird. This is not working. And I put this in refusal, even though he's already technically a teacher at this point, and it could be a test. I put it here because it comes so early. I mean, this is day 1, and there's more refusal to come.
Yeah,
and then. The best one is when he finally meets his orchestra class, 5th period, and he's asked Jacobs, are they any good? And Jacob says they try hard, which is, so they attempt to play Beethoven's 5th, and it is just unlistenable. And the subtitles, I always turn the subtitles on the second watch, and this closed caption writer wrote, they play it disjointedly, and I was like, that is correct. So bravo to the closed caption writer.
They sound like the Portsmouth Sinfonia. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening to this and you have never heard of Portsmouth Sinfonia, Sinfonia, look it up on YouTube and watch the Thus Sprach Zarathustra. That's easy to say. Watch that video. It is hysterical.
I'm putting this in the notes right now so that I remember. I'll put a link in the
there we go. Yeah.
page. That brings us to meeting with the mentor. The hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. As you've already mentioned, the key mentors here are Principal Jacobs and Coach Bill Meister, and also a little bit Mr. Holland's wife, Iris. You mentioned the cafeteria meeting. Meister, played by DJ J. Thomas, which I have more info about in the
DJ
tidbits.
J. Thomas.
Power 106.
What?
Yep, he was a DJ in New York, and then he was on Power 106 and had the top-rated morning show.
I didn't know that. I only know him from TV. He was on a sitcom.
I've got details about him in the tidbits that will blow your mind.
Wow, okay.
So yeah, he's showing Mr. Holland how to live in the special world. You're not going to have free time. You don't have to wait in the cafeteria.
Yeah, you don't have to wait in line with the students for the food.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get a little flawed mentor. Is it all he wants to hear about is all the women Mr. Holland must have had while he was on the road as a musician. So I was like, mentor, and then locker room talk.
Right.
So there's mentorship throughout the movie. Obviously, it's a movie about teaching, but those were the moments that I plugged in for these key mentor moments as he's entering the special world.
Okay. I have one that you didn't mention.
Hit me.
I guess it's a few months into the school year now. Mrs. Jacobs finds Mr. Holland leaving the school and calls his work ethic into question. She says, "You're the only teacher who's out the door faster than the students when the bell rings." And he gives the lamest, like, I show up and then I do my job and I leave.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Jacobs says to him,
"A teacher has 2 jobs. Fill young minds with knowledge, yes, but more important, give those minds a compass so that knowledge doesn't go to waste." Now, I don't know what you're doing with the knowledge, Mr. Holland, but as a compass, you're stuck.
That was the awakening for him. And that brings us to crossing the first threshold, where the hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world. This crossing represents the hero's commitment to taking on the adventure. One of the students, a redhead named Gertrude Lang, played by Alicia Witt, she is a terrible clarinet player.
Yes.
And he begins to spend one-on-one time with her to teach her how to play the clarinet. He tries different approaches with her and ultimately gets her to feel the music. And that is a tact that he takes with multiple struggling students throughout his career. He teaches them to feel the music. So that I saw was one of the crossings of the threshold, where he's beginning to actually take a driver's seat interest in his students' progress.
He's voluntarily sacrificing yet more of his quote unquote free time, his composing time, for the job.
Exactly. The other crossing the threshold moment I saw was Iris tells Glenn that she is pregnant, and he doesn't take it well. This is a crossing of a threshold into a different special world, that of being a father, which is in opposition with his career as a music teacher. So I saw that as a second special world, sort of his family life.
I'll buy that. I have that segment later, but I like the crossing the threshold into fatherhood.
I think I'll leave it there. I've got something else, but it could also be a test. So I think that'll do it, because I've already, the beginning to take music teaching seriously. That's what I saw.
I only had one other crossing of the threshold moment.
Okay.
And this is early on. It's after his first day. His wife is like massaging his back and shoulders, because conducting all day will wreck your shoulders. I have had this experience many times with Ami. This is when she says, you only have to do this for 4 years, and then you'll have enough to get by on, so you can just compose all the time. And he's complaining about his first day, and he's never going to make it.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be rougher than I thought. And she says, you can still quit. And so all of this sounds like a refusal. And then he says, nah, we've been through all that. So even though he's complaining,
oh, good,
he's leaning in here. And then we get this important foreshadowing, which is Iris says that she had a crush on her music teacher, Mr. Griffith, and he could have taken her home anytime. It's a little foreshadowing about what happens to Glenn. So that's the only other moment that I had under crossing the threshold.
Okay.
That brings us to the end of Act 1.
Golly.
Let's head over to the Campbell Cafe and talk about our side quests. Dan, what have you been reading, watching, playing, absorbing?
Absorbing. Oh boy. I have been spending all of my Glenn Holland free time working on our YouTube channel, No Games for Old Men.
Yes!
I have been playing a really great strategy game, tactics game called Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden. And I have started releasing episodes on YouTube of my playthrough. It's just been such a fun experience, not only playing the game in such a different way. Like, this is forcing me to be so much more present than maybe I would otherwise if I were just playing a game casually. Because I am trying to provide commentary as I play about the mechanics and explain my strategy and my thought process, and sometimes it works out beautifully and sometimes it's a miserable failure. But it's been a great experience. It's been fun too to see other people. I mean, there are more views on the videos than I have friends, so either you guys are watching 3 times, or there are people who are finding these videos and watching them. I know our listener and patron, Joseph Wilbur. He has watched and commented on a couple of the videos, so I know he's watching. Hi, Joseph. Thank you very much for watching. But there's got to be other people then, because there are more views than, like I said, than I've got friends. So that's exciting.
I never thought I would enjoy watching videos of someone playing video games, but I am hooked on your series. I have enjoyed, well, first of all, the game is well written, and so there's a story to it that's compelling.
Yes.
And then the other thing I'm enjoying is that your style of gameplay is so different and more effective than mine. Like, for example, when you finish a battle, you will stop and you will examine each weapon and each artifact, each upgrade, and you will weigh the pros and cons of each with great forethought. And I'm just like, oh, nice big gun, me go. But I'm enjoying your shopping expeditions, and so I think that's going to affect my playthrough of Knights of the Old Republic. And then also just the strategy you take and how careful you are in circumventing where the enemies are. And it's just great. It's really cool and fun to watch.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
I take comfort in the moments when you do stupid screw ups, because I feel like that's my, like the other episode, you finally got these 3 enemies within the exploding range of a grenade, and then you threw a flare instead, and you paid dearly for that. You just got mauled from that one mistake. It was like, oh well, that's so much for that game. Anything else?
Oh, I did watch. My wife shared Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf with me. Have you seen that?
No, it's on my list of classics, right?
A movie, from 1966 with Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, George Segal, and Sandy Dennis. The performance, the script was so good. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, who were married multiple times in real life, play a I'll say alcoholic couple. They certainly overindulge. I don't know if they are alcoholic or if they are just big time fans.
Art imitating life, maybe a little bit.
They invite this younger couple over after a party. And Richard Burton's character plays a history professor at a small college, the president of whom is the father of Elizabeth Taylor's character. The young couple, he is a new biology professor starting work at the college. And so he is seen as kind of the new male threat to Richard Burton's character. Particularly because Elizabeth Taylor seems quite taken with him when he shows up. So it is the devolving of that relationship.
It sounds lovely.
Oh yeah, no, it is the feel-good movie of the year. Great performances, though. I believe all 4 of them were nominated for Academy Awards for their categories.
Wow.
So thanks to my wife for showing that to me. She's been wanting me to watch it for a long time, and finally last Saturday she said, "Sit down, we're watching this movie." I've had it on the DVR for months.
Go Michelle, laying down the law.
Okay, that's it. I've talked plenty. What did you do? How did you follow your bliss this last gap?
Oddly, I've consumed a lot. I read 3 books and watched 3 films, which for me is a big one. I finally watched Encanto, which is the Disney musical written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. I've been told that the second watching is where things really start to sink in. I liked 2 of the songs, but I found the story weak. For me, there were big holes that you just kind of went along with. But I think it's an unusual story. I think it's kind of a story that I'm not used to and that I'm not used to Disney making. So I may need to give it one more shot. And then I watched a film called Ruby Sparks, which was written by Zoe Kazan, who is the granddaughter of Elia Kazan, the famous director and actor. And she wrote herself this starring role. And it's about a writer, a male writer, who writes into existence his perfect woman, and hilarity and disaster ensue. And she got to play the perfect woman, the perfect girlfriend. So it's a really great role for her because he can basically make up new things about her just by typing them.
Okay.
It's kind of a romantic comedy, but it's got darkness in it that I really enjoyed. It's really about control, not just in your creative life, but in your love life. And I related to it to the point of where I felt attacked by it, and but in a powerful way. And then I read 3 books. I read Termination Shock by Neil Stephenson, which is a cli-fi. It's a climate science fiction novel. I loved the science, and I loved the way he revealed it, but I didn't love the story. It wasn't like super compelling. It was one of those books where I'm like, okay, I'm going to finish this because it's solid, but it didn't have the compelling characters that some of his other works have, in my opinion. I read a 5-star book, an audiobook called Normal People by Sally Rooney, which is now a streaming series. And it's just about these 2 Irish kids, young adults who become adults, who have an unusual relationship on and off throughout high school, college, and beyond. And it's kind of like a study in millennial relationships and how different they are than the kind of relationships you and I probably had as Gen Xers. And so I found it compelling and sweet and tragic and also educational. And that was a 5-star book for me. It was unusual and really, really well written.
Wow. Okay. I've been seeing a lot of people in the Bookstagram community posting a lot about Sally Rooney lately. I was not familiar with her until that started happening, and now here you are mentioning it. So
it's literary, or I guess maybe it would be more considered upmarket fiction, but in a very unpretentious way. It's not delving into super poetic, rambling language for the sake of beautiful language. It's very simple, but it peels back the layers of thoughts and minds and feelings in a way that's not usually shared. It's very vulnerable and raw.
Oh.
Probably my biggest conquest is I read a book called 10:04, as in 4 minutes after 10 o'clock, by Ben Lerner, and it is a highly critically acclaimed book. It is very much literary fiction, which now literary fiction is sort of considered. The language is extraordinary, the characters are deep, the situations are compelling, but plot takes a deep 3rd or 4th position.
Okay.
And it's very meta. It's about a writer who gets a big advance to write a book just as he's diagnosed with a rare aortic dissection condition that could kill him at any moment.
Jeez.
So it's about him writing the book he's been commissioned to write, only it ends up being not at all the book that he's supposed to write. And so in that way, it has kind of an adaptation vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
It took me 6 weeks to read it, and it's less than 300 pages. But the language is so dense. It's not a book you can put down and pick up. You've really got to read at least until a line space, if not. And there's only 5 chapters in the book. So
Oh, wow.
I really, really enjoyed it, but man, it was like eating vegetables for that first 120 pages until I finally, and so it's about multiple possible futures, and it stays with the same main character, but it alternates between first and third person. And the secondary characters have different names. So I had to look up Dramatis Personae 1004. And it was like, oh yeah, these 2 characters have different names in the different sections, but they fulfill the same role. So that's why it was so confusing to me at the beginning, but really challenging. But I highly recommend 1004 by Ben Lerner and Ruby Sparks by Zoe Kazan. Those are my highlights. And Normal People by Sally Rooney. I guess I have 3 highlights.
Look at you doing some stuff.
Yeah.
And you have found time to watch the No Games for Old Men Let's Play series on Mutant Year Zero.
And I watched, 7 hours of Dan playing video games. Well, let's refill our coffee cups and get into Act 2. Act 2 begins with the first of many montage in this film. Holy cow, are there many, many montages. And the montage that leads us into Act 2 begins with Glenn composing at home, keeping that dream alive, and then private lessons with Gertrude as he's committing more to being a teacher. He's boring the students with music theory, and then time passes until Christmas, and he's falling asleep in class and grading papers at home and looking longingly at his piano and his manuscript.
Yeah.
That brings us to Test Allies and Enemies. Now in the special world, our hero makes allies, meets enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove his worthiness. On the allies board, we've got Iris, we got Coach Bill Meister, and Principal Jacobs. There's some mentor energy from all of those people. For enemies, I saw the key one is Vice Principal Walters, who tries to stop him at every turn.
Yep.
The school board later in the film. And then the American public, who failed to recognize the importance of arts education. This was a real problem in the 90s, and it has come back. School funding is hard, and the first thing to go is the arts.
Yeah. I didn't know that it had ever not been a problem.
Tests. At the opening of Act 2, as we come out of the montage, Holland is returning tests to the students. He's graded their tests, and he literally says, "These tests are pathetic." He literally says tests. This is a fail on his part as a teacher. He's failed to impart this knowledge, but it's also a challenge that he rises to when he says, "We're going to go over these answers one by one until you get them right." And I think that's a pass. Another test, Gertrude is practicing in the other room as Mr. Holland is finishing up for his day, and he pops in, or he yells, "Give it up, Miss Lang." And she takes it literally that she's supposed to give up. She starts crying, and he goes in there, I meant give it up for the day, but it's too late. And she sort of opens up and reveals that everybody else in her family is good at something, and she really wanted this to work, but she walks out. And that's a fail on his part. It's a great performance by Alicia Witt, who I didn't realize is the little girl from the 1984 Dune movie, the David Lynch film.
How can this be?
It's a great performance. The next test, I had Iris telling him she's pregnant as a test. I like your interpretation that it's a crossing of the threshold into fatherhood. I really like that. I'm going to say I think you are correct that is a crossing of the threshold. So she tells him he's pregnant, and he reacts very poorly. And then, I thought this was such a written by a man moment. He tells her this long story that's all about him and him hating John Coltrane at first and then falling in love with him. Just, and I'm thinking, really? This is about you and your Coltrane nonsense? So then, cut back to the music appreciation class. he has failed so far to engage the students. They're apathetic, and they clearly wish they were in any other class. And finally, he asks, what kind of music do you like? And so he shifts, and he employs the power of pop music. He plays the Toys' 1965 hit A Lover's Concerto, which is based on Bach's Minuet in G. And he shows them the similarity, and then he transitions to some rock and roll piano, and the students are getting into it. He's exciting them. He's connecting the fun of music with the thing he's trying to teach. But Vice Principal Walters is not happy. He hears the rock, and William H. Macy has this great run down the hall and slide to a stop. It's so great. And he just plays it so well, and he hears the rock and roll, and he is not happy. There's another father-husband test, which he passes. He's successfully built the crib, and then he tells Iris, hey, we can move into a new house. I'll put off composing and teach driver's ed for the summer. So now he's making a sacrifice intentionally. He hasn't been asked to make the sacrifice. He offers it. And the sacrifice is what he perceives to still be his calling, composing. He gives up more time for his art, for his family. So he hasn't changed completely yet because he hasn't embraced teaching as his destiny, but he has clearly changed. Tests are about proving the hero's worthiness, and Holland is doing that. And then, as a reward, Iris says, will you play for me the song that made me fall in love with you? And we get another snippet of his unfinished symphony. And this is a great way of her valuing the thing that he values so much about himself. So it's kind of like, you've stepped up as a dad. Let me show you my renewed interest in the thing that you love. God, I have so many tests. Gertrude tries to quit, and then he plays Louie Louie and starts teaching her that music is supposed to be fun. And he says, sit down and play the sunset. And that phrase immediately turns her into a virtuoso player with great tone and vibrato.
That's all. Sometimes that's all it takes.
That's right. Play the sunset. So we have our first concert. Well, it's not the first concert, but it's the first concert we see. And the orchestra sounds great, and Gertrude nails her solo, and it's a big pass.
Yeah, and she's in her cap and gown. This is like the graduation ceremony.
Right.
And this is when I realized that this movie was not going to be about him teaching this one group of students throughout a school year.
Nope, play the sunset, you're done. And then we have montage number 2. This is, as you said, the graduation of his first class of students. We see the beginning of the war in Vietnam. He's teaching driver's ed. It's getting more and more hilarious. They move into the new house. He's playing music through his headphones for the baby in utero. And that transitions to, in the driver's ed car, he's behind the wheel, driving crazily. And the students are very uncomfortable. Like, shouldn't you? That was a stop sign. But he's driving to the hospital to find that his wife has already given birth to their son, Coltrane Cole Holland. And he wasn't there. This is the beginning of his career as an absentee father. Harsh, I know. And then we see Mr. Holland playing piano with his infant son on the bench with them. Another daddy pass.
Yep.
Meanwhile, at Kennedy High, Walters has tattled on Mr. Holland to Principal Jacobs, telling her that he's been playing rock and roll in his classroom. And Holland defends himself, saying,
I am teaching music, and that I will use anything from Beethoven to Billie Holiday to rock and roll if I think it'll help me teach a student to love music.
And she says, well, that's an answer I can give the school board. She agrees to back him up, and that's a big pass.
Yeah. And I like that Walters he's just like, oh!
Yeah. He's...
Holland, you foiled me again.
Yes. William H. Macy plays the straight guy so well.
He's a stick in the mud.
Yes, he is. Okay, so one final test sequence. During this meeting with Walters and Jacobs, they tap him to start a marching band. And oh my God, does he fail at this. It's pathetic. It's like we're back to zero. The band can't march, and they certainly can't play while they're marching. And he's at a loss at how to teach them. And then Coach Meister says, I'll teach him to march if you'll teach one of my ex-players who got kicked off the team, Lou Russ, played by Terrence Howard.
Yeah, very young Terrence Howard.
Take him into the band and teach him how to play something so that he'll have a credit and be able to get back on the team. Ending this test sequence is montage number 3. And this is the most classic montage because it's the montage where Lou gets a little bit better at playing the bass drum each time until finally he finds the beat. And it culminates in a successful parade performance. Yay, big pass. That is what I see as the end of tests.
That brings us to The approach to the inmost cave, where the hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place, where the object of their quest is hidden. I had a rough time with this, as I do every episode, and I ultimately landed on the marching band is successful, but following the marching band is a fire engine that blares its horn.
Ugh.
And as everybody covers their ears, Iris looks down at Cole and he's fast asleep.
Yeah.
She realizes he has, if he's not completely deaf, he has a severe hearing deficiency.
Yeah.
Which has to be devastating for a couple, and particularly, I have a really hard time saying the word particularly.
That in February, terrible words.
For Glenn, who is a musician and has to have been looking forward to teaching his son music.
Named him after John Coltrane, for Christ's sake.
Coltrane Gershwin Holland.
No pressure.
Glenn tries to come to terms with this information by teaching his class about Beethoven and the Seventh Symphony. But a student says, how did Beethoven even know what a C note sounded like if he was deaf? And this is where I thought Glenn's attempt to reconcile with his son's condition falls apart, because he's forced to admit Beethoven wasn't born deaf.
Yeah.
This is followed by, I guess, the fourth
Montage number 4,
where we see a fast forward of major events of the 60s and 70s, Vietnam, the civil rights movement, the Beatles, hippies.
Really well constructed montages. I mean, we joke about montage, but this is montage school. If you want to learn how to make a montage, this guy nails it. That montage brings us into Ordeal. The hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. This movie gives you ups and downs and ups and downs. We're in class with Glenn's new crop of students, and his orchestra sounds great. I mean, over the last 10 years, he has definitely improved his pedagogy skills. And then Cole and Mom walk in to visit Dad at work. And there's this beautiful moment when Cole is imitating his dad, conducting with his eyes closed, just like he probably does at home, like he does in the very beginning of the film, waving his arms in the air like a conductor, and Holland smiles. But then the orchestra stops, and Cole is still conducting. And his eyes are closed, and he hasn't seen the orchestra stop, and he hasn't heard the music. And Glenn's heart breaks. In that moment, he's reliving that his son will never get to experience the music, which is the most important thing in the world to him. This is a kind of death. This is the death of the dream of this son who will become a musician himself. Later at home in the kitchen, Iris and Glenn are arguing about that private school. Meanwhile, Cole is moaning and pointing at something in the cabinet. He's trying to indicate he wants something, and Iris can't understand him. And the conflict escalates into a total meltdown where Cole's on the floor, screaming and pounding his fists. Iris and Holland are yelling at each other, and Iris screams,
I don't know what he wants or what he thinks or what he feels. I can't tell him that I love him. I can't tell him who I am. I want to talk to my son. I don't care what it costs. I don't care what stupid doctor says is right or wrong. I want to talk to my son.
That is the low point for their family. So they check out that school for the deaf, and it's going to be expensive. And not even just the money, but the parents have to put in effort. It's 3 months, 3 hours a day. And so he's watching that, on top of his teaching time and helping other students and driver's ed. Now he's got to go to school for 3 months, and there's no more composing time. His dream of this symphony is getting smashed by his family commitments and by the thing that's happened to his son. And to cap it off, finally at the end of one class, Mr. Holland gets news that Lewis, the football drum student, has died. And this is hero witnesses death. And at the funeral, the coach reads a poem called Flanders Fields by a Canadian poet named John McCrae. And I lost it. The minute he saw, oh God, it's Flanders Field. So that's what I saw as end of Ordeal.
That brings us to the reward. Having faced their worst fear, the hero seizes the object of their quest. The object of the quest globally is completing his symphony, but I think the real reward that he receives here is Mrs. Jacobs at that year's graduation ceremony tells Mr. Holland that she is retiring and gives him a gift. And he opens it, and it is a compass. Very symbolic. You know, that first dressing down that she gave him. Now he has finally found his compass. And she says, of all the teachers here at this school, you are my favorite.
God, I cried
this
at
guy
that
who on his first day said, I only got my teaching certificate so I'd have something to fall back on. And her questioning his work ethic. The relationship between the two is told in very brief moments, but they're impactful for Glenn.
Yeah.
And this is the culmination of that. You didn't want to be a teacher at all, but you are a great teacher. That is the reward for Glenn.
Yeah.
There's no way you can fight me on this.
I agree 100%.
I will come to your house and I will eat a banana with my mouth open right in your
you
ear.
will masticate.
If you fight me on this.
No, I completely agree. And this was one of the many points where I cried because you mentioned that the global goal is to write his symphony, but I think it's really about accepting his destiny, accepting his true calling. And this is that moment when, you know, her last mentor moment. Yeah. I've taught you all I can teach you. Here's a symbol of your achievement.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't. We need to take a break.
And then Glenn says, I was once the learner, but now I am the master. All right. Wow. I told you to have a box of tissues ready. That was part of the opening. So let us dry our tears and make our way to the Vogler Lounge for a beverage break.
Welcome to the Vogler Lounge. Dan, tell us what you're drinking.
I found a vino called Arietta Quartet. Arietta is the name of the winery. And yes, I know an Arietta is a vocal piece, but I had a rough time finding a themed beverage for this. And my wife remembered there's a wine bar in our neighborhood. And she said, I think there's a wine at there that's got musical instruments on the label. So luckily I found it, because otherwise I had nothing. Like, does Glenn drink? I don't remember him drinking anything. And oh boy. And I looked for, I was like, gosh, am I going to have to like get a bottle of Heineken because Heineken is made in Amsterdam?
And then you could pour it into a stein like Gertrude Lang. Not Gertrude Stein. Mixing up my Gertrudes.
Okay, so Quartet, though, this is the name of this particular wine. Arietta is in the Napa Valley, specifically St. Helena. This is a 2018 vintage. Quartet, there are 4 different red grapes in this wine. There's 51% Cabernet Sauvignon, 24% Merlot, 24% Cabernet Franc, and 1% Petit Verdot.
1%. How do you use measuring exactly? Just one grape.
Yeah. I don't know that they do it with that egregious accent.
Yes, they do.
But yes.
I had to fit an accent here. Throw me a bone.
So the label says Arietta Quartet is a blend of Cab Sauvignon, Merlot, Cab Franc, and Petit Verdot from carefully chosen vineyard blocks in the Napa Valley, aged for 20 months in French oak barrels, 50% of which are new. So 50% new, 50% used.
French oak. So that justifies the accent. This one's grape.
Ugh. Arietta Quartet is approachable upon release, but rich enough to age well for 10 years or more. I don't have that kind of time. The label features a drawing of instruments of the string quartet by 8-year-old Libby Hatton, the future proprietor of Arietta. She is the daughter.
Wow, an 8-year-old drew that?
Yep. Over a manuscript fragment of the famous cavatina movement from Beethoven's string quartet Opus 130.
Wow.
There we go. So this is 14.9% alcohol by volume.
Like Mr. Holland, the proprietors of Arietta have already decided what their 8-year-old daughter's destiny is going to be, even though she's clearly a talented artist.
Yeah, I don't know.
They have an awakening.
All right, so coming. I have pre-poured it into the glass because I wanted it to breathe a little bit, because with all of those heavy red grapes, I wanted, much like Richard Dreyfuss's character in Jaws suggests, you want to let that breathe a little bit? So it's super, super dark. This is there is no light coming through here at all, even holding it up against the window with the sun blasting through it. Nothing at all. This scent, I'm getting a scent of almost nail polish remover.
Oh, dear God. That's not a good sign.
Which is like a really high alcohol.
Acetone? There's...
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not getting a whole lot of anything on the nose. And when I opened the bottle and I smelled the cork, it smelled a little, it's not, the wine itself is not corked, but that's what I smelled on the cork when I smelled it. So I was a little concerned. When a wine is corked, it means too much oxygen has gotten into the wine itself and spoiled it. So generally, a corked wine will smell like wet cardboard. So if you open a bottle and it smells like wet cardboard, send the bottle back. It's not a good bottle. Okay, I'm not getting, ooh, hold on. Okay. Maybe it needed some more time. And maybe my hand, because I'm holding the glass now, my hand is warming it up, and that might be encouraging some of the scents to come out. But I just got black cherry. Oh, it tastes like cherry too. Specifically black cherry.
Huh, so you identified it correctly.
Wow. And it's like, my tongue is tingling. That's neat.
That's that nail polish remover.
Okay. Very fruit forward, as they say. It's also making me salivate. Okay, that's good. I was concerned when I smelled the cork. This is very, very good, which is good because this was not a cheap bottle. $57 was the sticker price.
Oh, damn.
Which isn't too expensive, but it is way more than I typically spend for a bottle of wine, just drinking wine. Are you ready to reveal your beverage?
I am.
Or do you want me to chew my wine a little more?
No, definitely chew your wine. So for those of you who are only listening, Dan, in order to circulate the wine through his mouth so he can taste it and experience it, he does this chewing thing. And the first time I saw him do it, I was like, what the hell is that?
Come on. Everyone who's ever watched anybody drink wine knows that this is not new.
I had never seen it before, so I was...
You're crazy.
So like you, I had trouble. So my first instinct was I did pick up a can of Heineken, which is...
Oh, that's hysterical.
The number one beer of Holland.
That's great.
But then I decided that I needed to go against the rules. We buried my father-in-law yesterday, and he loved beer. He was a gentle, gregarious man with a huge laugh. And I first started dating Ami in college, and I met him, when I was 18. And so I've known him for, more than 20 years. And it became a tradition that whenever I came over to their house, I would bring beer for us to taste and share. And
oh, that's cool.
He preferred, when we first started drinking beer together, he preferred lagers, but I sort of edged him into the world of IPAs and stouts. And so we drank so many different beers together. I'd bring over my favorites. I'd bring over random stuff that I found or that someone had given me, and we'd try it together. But
that's great.
My best memory of drinking beer with him is the first time I went to the Philippines. When you fly there, the time's all messed up, so you arrive at like 2:00 in the morning or something. And we arrived at my mother-in-law's family home in Manila. And like the bottom floor, it's like a 3-story house that's very narrow. And the bottom floor is like a garage. And then there's a ramp up into the living area because flooding happens often. So the bottom floor of your house is kind of like a garage because you can't put anything there that can't get water damage because it happens a lot. So,
but your car?
No, you don't really park cars in there. It's just it looks like a garage. It's a concrete floor, and
okay, you
couldn't fit a car in there. I don't think motorcycles. They park motorcycles and scooters in there. Anyway, I arrived.
Not the important part of the story. Sorry.
Right. I arrived.
That's just like me, isn't it?
Very
focus on something
about the
completely
details.
Unrelated.
So I arrived, and the minute I walked through the door, he hands me a 22-ounce bottle.
Whoa.
Of this thing called
Not messing around.
Red Horse. there's a brewery in the Philippines called San Miguel, and you've probably had San Miguel. It's a light lager. It's distributed around the world, but it's the Filipino beer. You know, it's their Corona. It's their Budweiser.
Okay.
But San Miguel also makes a beer called Red Horse, and it is described as a strong lager. It is 8% alcohol by volume, you know, as opposed to like 5%.
Mm-hmm.
And the ad campaign for it, it's like the ads for Michelob Ultra. It's all these sports figures playing hockey or doing extreme sports or riding bike. And I'm like, oh my God, if you drank 22 ounces of an 8% beer, there's no way you're going to perform any kind of athletic ability. It's described on the website as a strong, high alcohol beer. It is deeply hued. It says it is deeply hued lager with a distinctive sweetish taste balanced by a smooth bitterness for the man with real strength inside and out.
Specifically the man. So they do not intend for female humans to drink this beer.
Yes. But here's the capper. It's 88 degrees in the Philippines, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In the summer, it goes up, and it's tropical, so it's 100% humidity. It's just...
Yeah.
So it had been out of the refrigerator for a while, and like everything in the Philippines, their food, they eat lukewarm. They don't put it in the refrigerator because it's going to stay warm. It's 88 degrees, so why, you sit out the food and it sits for an hour, it's still warm. So he served me a 22-ounce bottle of 8% lager that was room temperature.
Oh, wow.
And I picked up that bottle and I looked around at the other men in the room and I decided, it's 2 a.m. I'm drinking this. I'm going to drink this whole bottle. This was a ritual. It was a rite of passage. You could see them looking at me like, oh, what's this little skinny white guy going to do? And I was like, right on. So I have here a lukewarm bottle of Red Horse lager that I'm going to open.
Lukewarm?
Lukewarm. It has not been refrigerated. It was sitting in my cabinet.
That's great.
All right. And you drink it from the bottle. You don't pour this into a glass. This is no.
Oh, we don't get to see what it looks like?
I will describe the color to you because I just drank some. If you pour it into a glass, it looks like a really dark whiskey. But there's a red color to it. So it really looks like kidney failure.
It's a red ale.
Yeah. It's a red lager.
Okay.
So the smell, that I can get from the bottle here is it has a sweet, caramely, malty. I smell malt in there.
Sounds good.
It doesn't smell medicinal. Yep. So here we go. Drinking it straight from the bottle. I might even do the chewing thing here.
Yep. Good. Yeah. Make sure it coats all the surfaces of your mouth.
Wow. All right. So it is sweet, and it definitely has that maltiness of. Doesn't taste. I mean, it does have that lager lightness, but then underneath it is sort of this punch of kind of like a molasses kind of sweetness.
Okay.
And it does have a bitter aftertaste. So that's that bitterness that they reference, and it kind of like it's sitting along the sides of my tongue and on the tip of my tongue, like a little bitter blanket. And honestly,
little bitter blanket sounds like a song you would have written in high school.
It does. So the night before the funeral, I sat down with my brother and sister-in-law and Ami, and we shared one. And this tastes better at room temperature than it does cold. Or maybe I'm just remembering that night/morning when I was drinking it with my father-in-law. Hold on.
That is made in the Philippines, and they're making a beer for its place.
Yeah, maybe.
So, they know maybe refrigeration is difficult or maybe pointless if you take a bottle out of the refrigerator and within a minute it's going to be 88 degrees. So,
yeah,
they've designed I'm guessing here they've designed a beer to.
The label is red foil with a gold foil logo, and it's got a red horse head at the top and then a red horseshoe along the bottom,
which is. Of course, the open end is facing up.
Yes, that's right.
Because that is a good luck symbol.
So this one's for Marvin.
Yeah, Marvin.
Cheers. I was actually planning to take a few swigs and then switch to the Heineken, but I'm going to finish this damn bottle.
You absolutely should. That's rad. Where did you find that?
I was walking through Bevmo.
Get out.
And I looked down, I figured I would find San Miguel because it's pretty well distributed. And I looked down, and there, by God, is a 6-pack of Red Horse, and I put it in my cart so fast. It was the only 6-pack there. It was like,
oh, wow. It was meant to be.
Yeah, man.
That's cool. There's moments like that happen. When my father-in-law passed away, my brother-in-law, his car had broken down, and he was having a real hard time finding a vehicle that worked for them. And he was walking through this used car lot, and he saw the perfect car. It was exactly what they were looking for, met all of their needs. And the license plate, the first 4 characters were 4, the number 4, S-O-N.
Oh.
And he'd been walking through that car lot saying, "Come on, Dad, I need your help.
God.
Help me out. Help me out." God. And he sees this car. So I'm not saying that there's anything spiritual happening here,
saying.
but the fact that there was one 6-pack of Red Horse at that Bevmo the moment you walked by it.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Every now and then something like that happens that makes me go, okay, maybe there's something a little more to this life than life.
Well, I think the opposite happens, but we just don't record it.
Yeah.
But, life is made up of the stories we tell ourselves. And the story I'm going to tell myself is that Marvin wanted to have a last Red Horse with me. And when we visit, I've got 4 more left. Mm-hmm. And we're going to go visit his gravesite in a couple days, and we're going to have a room temperature Red Horse in his honor.
At gravesite?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's rad. Very cool.
All right. Well, let's move on to Act 3. Act 3 begins with the road back. Our hero is pursued by the vengeful forces they disturbed when they seized the object of their quest. Act 3 begins with a montage. Montage number 5 by my count.
Number 5.
We get the end of the war, driver's ed, Nixon resigning, President Carter, staying alive, Talking Heads, Sex Pistols. I'm going to start over. You don't want the Sex Pistols, man. Energy crisis, Rocky Horror, Reagan, Palestine, terror on the airline, Ayatollahs in Iran, Russians in Afghanistan. Oh, Russians in Ukraine. Nothing's changed.
Jeez.
So now it's 1980, and there are a fresh crop of students. At a staff meeting, VP Walters tries to cancel the school play.
P. Walters.
Oh, now he's
he
principal. You're
Walters.
Right. P. Walters tries to cancel the school play.
And he is a P.
Oh, he's a D and a P.
He's the biggest P.
And they protest, but then Coach Meister saves it by pitching the idea that the football players will dance in the show and that everyone will show up to see them fall on their butts, but that they won't because he minored in dance, in modern dance. What a great layer for Coach Meister. Like, he's already,
yes.
You see him and you meet him as this jock character, but as the movie goes on, you're like, wow.
When we meet Coach Meister, I already had a prejudice against him because he is the football coach. Mm-hmm. And in every movie that takes place in a school, the football coach is always the enemy of the academic teacher.
Yeah.
And so I did not expect Coach Meister to be an ally for this music teacher.
I always felt that way about the football team at our high school. Like, they were the bad guys.
Well, some of them literally were to us.
Yeah, some of them literally were. And I Jeff Garvin writer moment. I definitely included that in my first book. I made the football players the bad guy, but then I also had a football player who was a good guy. So
that's right, Solo.
Solo was a football player. He broke the mold.
He did. It all started with you.
That's right.
And that's your Jeff Garvin author moment.
I think the main body of this road back, it's essentially Glenn's midlife crisis.
Yeah?
He has struggled hard to leave behind his life as a gigging musician and his dream of pursuing being a famous composer, and he has begun to embrace his destiny as a teacher and a family man. And in this context, I think vengeful forces is too strong a term, but the sequence that follows does show him dealing with the consequences of seizing his reward. He's become a successful teacher, but at a cost. He has quashed his self-expression as a composer, so he's built up this subtle resentment and frustration.
It's not so subtle sometimes.
Well, yeah, correct. His marriage has devolved into a contentious co-parenting situation. His relationship with his son is distant and antagonistic, and this leaves him frustrated, unsatisfied, and unseen.
Nailed it.
Enter Rowena, a beautiful, talented young ingenue with big dreams.
She looks like Daisy Ridley to me.
Daisy Ridley would have been like
same smile.
Barely born by then.
No. I mean, is this Daisy Ridley's mom? I looked it up. It's not. She's not. But she looks so much like Daisy Ridley that I actually did that research to find out if the actress was.
I recognized her immediately from Grey's Anatomy and several guest stars on CSI. I was like, oh my God, she's so young. So Rowena represents all the freedom and the happiness and the open future and the self-expression that Mr. Holland has given up.
Yep.
Vogler cites pursuit by admirers as part of the road back. It's a variation on the chase. And boy, do we see that here.
Oh, yeah.
So Glenn casts her as one of the leads in the review, and he starts mentoring her and spending private time with her, working on her songs. And there's this sexual undertone because she's making doe eyes at him during the auditions and during rehearsals. So Glenn misses the science fair that his son threw his heart into, and Iris confronts him about being an absentee father. And he says,
I do one thing, I let him down. I do another thing, I let the school down. How the hell am I supposed to be everything for everybody?
These are the consequences of his committing to teaching. He's finally committed to teaching, but that has consequences too.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm doing my best. And she says, your best isn't good enough. Go on, write your music. And that sets him off. Write my music. When do I have time to write my music? So now he is completely vulnerable to this taste of freedom.
And it's a callback to when Coach Meister on Glenn's first day says, I can't remember the last time I had free time.
Yeah, it's proving true. So then Rowena sings Someone to Watch Over Me, and he coaches Rowena, and she's clearly moved in an unhealthy way. She is developing romantic feelings, or at least idolization. So Glenn's at a coffee shop working on his manuscript because he has to get out of the house to work on it.
That's the most peaceful place for him to work.
It gets him away from the commitments of home and all this stuff that needs to be done.
I get it. I'm just pointing out the tragedy.
Yeah. So she stalks him to this coffee shop. I mean, my impression was when she walks in, she's looking for him.
Uh-huh.
And they have a mentor moment where he says she's a great talent and she should follow her dreams of going to New York and becoming a singer.
Instead of staying at home and being a waitress at her father's restaurant like he wants her to do.
Right. And, you get the sense in that moment that he's reacting from his baggage and giving her kind of rash advice because he makes it sound like you have a choice between pursuing your dreams or not. You need to do this. Don't listen to your parents. In a following scene, Glenn's at the piano trying to compose. Iris is in the kitchen. Cole is doing some kind of homework that involves smelly stuff. Did you see what he's building, a model, or he's...
I assumed that he was building a model because model glue is really toxic.
Yeah.
Particularly to the olfactory sense. It was...
So Glenn complains that it's smelly and take that outside. So Cole goes and opens all the windows and it's windy, so it blows Glenn's score all over the place.
Yeah.
And Cole's trying to help him clean up, but he pushes him away and, says, don't touch. Only he makes the sign for don't sit.
Don't sit.
And it's, it's the perfect symbol. Like, he hasn't put in the work to learn how to communicate with Cole.
Yes.
And Mom has. And Cole is just frustrated. Like, you don't even know how to scold me properly because you don't know the language.
Important to note here that Cole didn't open the windows on his own. His mom told him to open the windows.
Yes.
Cole didn't help Dad clean up the sheet music on his own. Mom asked Cole to help Dad clean up the sheet music. So Cole is torn between his mother's instructions and his dad being mad at him for being in the way.
And Iris is trying to give them opportunities to connect. Hey, help your dad. Be good to your dad. And he's not having any of it.
It all backfires, yeah.
Glenn's heart is still broken. Music was the way he communicated. That's how his wife fell in love with him through music. He becomes a teacher, but he becomes a music
Excellent
teacher.
point.
And the only way he knows how to communicate, he can't have. And he resents Cole for that.
And just like Iris, when they were arguing about the private school, Glenn is feeling the same thing. He's just not vocalizing it.
Atonement with the father is an important stage of the hero's journey in Campbell. And it's interesting here to see it flipped because it's atonement with the son.
Yeah.
And it becomes a powerful engine to drive the rest of the third act of this movie. Okay, Mr. Holland is rehearsing with Rowena, and she discovers the manuscript for his opus, and she asks him to play it. Danger, 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 danger. I was so uncomfortable from the moment he picked her for this role. I was like, oh, because I've never seen this movie before. And so
I hadn't either.
And I was like, oh God, please don't. Oh, please don't. Oh, so this whole like hour of the movie was just terrifying.
Don't do this, Glenn. We're on your side up to this point.
So he plays it and she sings along, and it's like he's experiencing, oh my God, she gets me. She understands. She's collaborating with me. This girl is in sync with me musically.
Yeah.
So next time we see the manuscript, he's named it Rowena's theme. Oh, and Iris sees it and asks who Rowena is. Now, he tells her, oh, she's a figure in Norse mythology, and I've got a book around her. So she was a figure in Norse mythology, and she was a femme fatale. So it's very appropriate that he pulls that out of his pocket. But
how do you solve a problem like Rowena?
Wow. I love you, Dan. I love your musical references. We're so in sync musically. You understand me. You're my Rowena.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
So, but on the positive side, he's inspired again to compose. He's at the piano again doing it. Okay, so now we're at the show. The show goes really, really well. She nails it. He's in the, he's conducting, and they're making lovey eyes at each other. And in the audience, Iris is reading all of this.
Yes.
Nothing misses her. She knows exactly what's going on. And after the show, he says, hey,
hang on.
Okay.
Hang on.
Yeah.
She's also reading the program and sees that the ingenue is named Rowena.
Yeah, you idiot.
And puts that together immediately.
Yeah, she does. She's like, weird that she's named after this North goddess.
Oh, huh. Wow, how interesting.
Interesting. And remember, she was desperately in love with her music teacher. So this is just like she knows exactly what's happening. And you can see her like she's feeling the shock, but she knows what's going on. And you can see her hoping that this is just So
I will say that this storyline did not go where I expected.
Yes.
I thought it was going to be much more of a blow up between Glenn and Iris, and it didn't. She understood it and just let it run its course.
Iris is an incredible wife and partner and mother. She was the one who said you only have to do this for 4 years. And he's the one who said, no, I'll teach driver's ed and we'll move into it. So I think on some level, though she's frustrated, she really gets the sacrifice that he's made for her family. And so even though this is this devastating possibility, she leaves a space for him to be the man she's always known. She really gives him a chance here. After the show, he meets Iris and Cole in the audience, and they're saying, oh, the show went great. And he says, the kids are going out after the show. I should make an appearance. And you can see Iris's face fall like, oh, God, is this...
But he invites them along, though. That should have been the opportunity to squash those fears. Like, yes, I will come along and put up the defensive wall between...
And she doesn't. She gives him the space.
She gives him the opportunity to do the right or the wrong thing.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he does the right thing.
Earlier, that I've kind of skipped this. Oh, no, it's after the show. Rowena goes up to him and says, I'm going to New York, and I want you to come with me. Don't you see you could be writing great music? Now, talk about stabbing him right in the heart. Yeah. She is saying to him, you're brilliant. You could make it. All you have to do is come with me to New York.
Talk about temptation of the goddess.
Yes. And I need your guidance and I need someone to watch over me. So you could be my mentor. You could fulfill all the mentorship music. This would be the culmination of both of the things that you love to do. And he has this one moment where you see him just like, oh God, I want this. And it's not a lascivious sexual moment. It's an, oh my God, this could be, I mean, look, obviously there's an attraction. But in that moment, I don't think it's the sexual aspect that's so tempting to him. I think it's I could have the freedom that I've always wanted. I could do this. I could make this choice and go.
And honestly, that is part of the midlife crisis.
A lot of men leave their wives and their kids and go start a new life.
Yep.
With a younger woman.
Right.
So she says that my bus leaves tomorrow night. You should come. And so after closing night, cut to outside the Rexall Drugs. She's sitting on this bench at the bus stop and he shows up. But he sits down next to her and he pulls out a piece of paper and says, this is the name of a musician friend that you can stay with. They're expecting you. So he's supporting her dream, but he's not coming with her. And we're like, oh. And then they stand up. And they're face to face, inches apart, and they're about to kiss. And he sort of dodges and like kisses the corner of her mouth / cheek. And it's like, it's not, I mean, he could have done the forehead kiss thing, but they make it just scandalous enough to be like, oh, he barely dodges this bullet.
I think it grazed him. I don't think he dodged it.
Yeah, you're right. It grazed him. So afterward, he goes home.
There's definitely a flesh wound there.
He goes home and he tells his wife he loves her. And she somehow knows that it didn't go wrong. And so
she goes full Han Solo on him.
Yeah, she says, I know. That's right.
I know.
So for me, that's the end of the road back.
I included also in Road Back John Lennon's murder.
I'll buy that.
Because that has an effect on Glenn.
Yes.
And it causes another fight with Cole. And Cole pursues Glenn into the house. And with Iris translating, because Glenn never learned to sign well enough to have a conversation, Cole confronts Glenn, echoing Iris's earlier accusations about Glenn caring more about his students than he does about his own son. And Cole says, do you think I don't know who John Lennon is? You think I don't know who the Beatles are? I know this means something to you because you're my father. Of course, I know you are a musician. Of course, I am trying to understand. I try to learn about music. Sure, just because I can't hear it doesn't mean I'm not doing what I can to understand you as your son, which is a heck of a lot more than Glenn has done.
Well, I mean, he put a roof over his head and fed him. Sorry, I'm taking this personally. What? That's the empty Red Horse bottle. Oh, boy.
Well, you better crack open that 46-ounce can of Heineken then. He's doing it.
Challenge accepted.
I just heard it go. All right, Resurrection. Hero faces death one more time in a final battle or showdown. I'm going to mute your track.
The editing power.
This time, the danger is at the apex. So first, Glenn attempts to resurrect his family life by going to Cole's school and asking if he can put on a symphony for the hearing impaired children, students of that school, including his son. And the symphony goes well. Like, he has a conversation with, and I loved the fact that I don't know if she was the administrator, the principal, Cole's teacher. I don't understand who this woman was.
Yeah.
But when he's speaking to Glenn's the only one there.
Yeah.
She doesn't need to sign, but she uses sign language in addition to vocal speech the entire time she's talking to Glenn. How rad is that? I loved that. That was so good. And it's also showing Glenn how deficient he is, because he has not learned to sign. He has no idea what she's saying.
Sign language is the only language you can speak simultaneously with another language.
Yeah, it's impressive. So the two of them come up with this idea that, lights, they'll do flashing lights that pulse with the music so that the hearing impaired watching the symphony can get a sense, can feel the music. And they're also feeling the vibrations of course. And then Glenn gets up and he apologizes to the hearing-enabled members of the audience because he's going to actually sing John Lennon's Beautiful Boy, and he dedicates it to his son, and he signs as best he can to his son. Great moment.
Oh my God.
Great
and I'm
moment.
crying, you know.
Of course.
You're crying. Because every parent wants that relationship with their kid. And by the way, Cole is just like, he's taking it. He's stoic. He's not crying.
No.
He's like...
He's not stoic. He's appreciating this moment.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Look at the look on his face.
I would have been, but he's pretty cool.
No, he's enjoying the moment. Come on. Christmas morning. You love Christmas. Let's talk about Christmas. Glenn and Iris come downstairs. Cole is listening to Ray Charles, sitting on the speakers, listening to the music so that Cole can feel. And he signs to his dad, "Show me more." And Glenn signs, "I would love to." Connection, resurrection of the father-son relationship.
Yes.
Boom. Done. Okay. Now, here comes the true final battle. Mr. Walters, due to budget concerns from the school board, cuts music, art, and drama. Glenn is out of a job.
Jacobs would have fought this.
She would have lost.
Yes, she would have lost, but she would have fought this, and so will I.
Glenn confronts the school board, to no avail, of course, because money is everything. We cut to a scene of Iris reading a letter from Cole. He has received an offer to teach at a prestigious school for deaf children.
A teacher. He's going to be a teacher. Like, come on. Oh, my God.
Yep, the son has followed the father after all. But he is saying that he isn't interested in taking the high-paying job because he is being fulfilled by... I think he's teaching at the school that he went to, right?
I cry
Isn't that what it is?
So much in this movie.
Okay, so Glenn is now sitting in his classroom, packing up his one cardboard box that you see everybody who leaves a job ever carry.
Yeah, see, all you need is one, like, banker box. That's it.
That's what I got.
You can fit... Really?
When I left my job, that's what I had. Stuck it all in one cardboard box. Everything else went into the dumpster fire. Bill Meister comes in, and they have a little chat about Glenn's concerns about the future. He says to Coach, they're never going to cut football, so you have nothing to worry about. Then later, Iris and the adult Cole arrive, and they are helping Glenn carry out his personal effects. And they're walking through the halls of the school, and Glenn hears a commotion in the auditorium. And in a moment that is made possible only because Glenn decides he's going to stop and investigate this commotion in the auditorium. Had he just walked out the door, what was going to happen? What would have happened?
Yeah. It would have been nice.
There would have been an awkward moment of Iris going, "Oh, wait, Glenn, what's going on in the auditorium?" I don't know. That was a little forced moment. However.
Right. What is that? What are they doing in there? I hear music.
So he's going to go investigate, and he opens those auditorium doors to find the auditorium full of current and former students applauding, cheering. There's a big banner over the stage that says goodbye or farewell, Mr. Holland. And get your tissues ready, ladies and gentlemen, because the next 10 minutes are like, I couldn't even really see the screen very clearly for most of it.
Yeah. You're full on bleeding to my return to the elixir.
I can see that because I have a divide within this scene. So why don't we cut the resurrection then, because the final battle, it's been lost. He argues with Walters and he argues with the school board, but ultimately music program is cut. So really not Glenn Holland because of his failures as the hero of the story,
right,
but just by circumstances of government budget cuts.
Yeah.
He loses the final battle.
That brings us to Return with the Elixir. The hero, having won some precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. So, as you mentioned, Iris and Gaston show up and lead him into the...
Wait, what?
Dude...
Gaston.
Adult Cole is Gaston. He's got the big arms.
What?
He's got the ponytail. You got to Look at a photo of Gaston.
Gosh.
He looks exactly
He's blonde,
like it.
though, so I didn't put it...
Yeah, that's
Wow.
true. He is blonde.
Well, once again, I wish your new co-host good luck, because I'm obviously not putting any of these things together.
Gaston.
These are obviously very important to you.
The theater, the auditorium, is entirely packed with current and former students, staff, faculty members whose lives he's touched.
Even Principal Walters.
Yep.
Get at it.
Even
what are
Grumpy
you doing
Walters
there?
is there. He's
Get-
what a performative wokeness he's showing. Like, oh, what a jerk. So
Whatever.
Gertrude Lang, who is now the governor, shows up. Now, if
I
you're
thought that was Dana Delaney, by the way, when she walked in. And it's not Dana Delaney. It's
No.
not her.
So one shortcoming is if you're the governor, instead of showing up, maybe you write some laws to fund music education. Governor Lang.
Oh, sick burn.
Boom.
But we also know that the governor, because you got an A in civics, the governor does not write the laws, Jeffrey.
I'm just saying there's a lot of advocacy and power that a governor has to influence the legislation.
Not
we
anymore.
didn't see any of that.
Not anymore.
This was 1995, brah.
It's done. It's done. Don't bra me.
Do you even play, bro? So she
is happening?
introduces this band of alums who play his symphony, the piece of music
Yes.
he's been writing the whole, and I'm crying.
We are your symphony, Mr.
Yes.
Holland.
Oh
she
my
says.
God. So the culmination of both. So he gets up and conducts his students in playing his opus. Like this is the culmination. And we even see Spit Valve guy dumping his spit valve in the middle of
onto the shoe.
onto the shoe.
Of
See
the girl next
the
to
girl
him,
looking
just
at-
like last time.
And that's it. They play his opus, and that is the perfect ending. It's the culmination of his entire life's experience coming together. Amen. The end.
Not a dry eye in the house. 30 years of teaching students and then also composing, coming together in a collaborative... I'm not crying, you're crying.
Shut up, crybaby. All clipped, by the way. Dan, that is 2 episodes in a row that messed us up. I demand that the next episode be fun.
It will be! Join us next episode as we celebrate Major League Baseball Players Association reaching an agreement with the owners and rescuing the 2022 season with an exploration of the 1989 on the cusp baseball comedy Major League. By the time you hear that episode, baseball season will already be in full swing. Let's go, Dodgers!
I want to do an Angels thing, but that's literally the same chant as the Angels. Let's go. We can't even get so much talent.
We're very creative.
So few wins. Ugh, come on. Tani, you got Trout.
Let's go, Expos!
Get out of here.
If you are interested in supporting the podcast, please go to patreon.com/Heroes Journey Podcast and see if one of the tiers appeals to you. Hey, there is a tier called Mentor. It is less than the price of a gallon of gasoline
It's not saying
at
much.
the moment as of this writing. And it enables you to vote on the subject of future episodes. So, hey, I don't know. Be a mentor and vote for movies that were not made in the 90s.
But we love the 90s.
We aren't VH1, Jeff.
None of our listeners remember VH1, Dan.
Of course they do. That's why they keep voting for movies from the 90s. Please thank the patrons and get us out of this hellscape.
Yes, you too can subscribe and listen to episodes of Behind the Podcast. A big heap of gratitude to all patrons who make this show possible, especially those of you who vote for movies from the 90s, including our demigod patrons Scott Sanford, Ricky Garvin, John Peterson Jr., Jeff Scott, Joseph Wilbur, Michelle Calderon, Ami Garvin, Salothiel Jones, and Jasmine and Pete Hudson.
And special thanks to musician Taylor Jordan for composing the Hero's Journey theme music. and to Jason Dorff. See, we here, unlike the Portland Unified School District, we support the arts.
That's right.
Jason Dorff for our artwork, the episode artwork, the new logo. Links to their portfolios can be found on the About page of heroesjourneypodcast.com.
Mr. Holland's Opus is copyright the 5th year of the last decade of the 20th century. We didn't say the 90s.
I will gouge your eyes out with my thumb.
Interscope Communications, Inc.
Thanks again for listening. Until next time,
Journey on.